I'm Tariq Milnos, and yes, I saw the clip. The one where the politician was saying something so confidently wrong, it deserves to be studied in schools. I've rewatched it 3 times, partly for research, partly because it's oddly fascinating watching someone dig a hole and jump in. But we're not here to gawk. We're here to break it down. Hit that subscribe button because trust me, today's story has more layers than a bureaucratic excuse, and we're peeling them all. Buckle up. It's about to get uncomfortable in the best way.
Lauren Boebert's MAGA chaos hit a wall when a watchdog ripped her authoritarian script to shreds, live, unfiltered, and humiliating. Stay tuned as we break down every brutal second of this takedown. Welcome to the clip.
Mr. Chairman, Administrator Regan, is it true that the EPA has never obtained formal authorization legislation from Congress?
I'm sorry?
Is it true that the EPA has never obtained formal legislation, authorization legislation from Congress? It's never been authorized by Congress.
EPA is not authorized by Congress?
I'm asking you.
I thought EPA was authorized by Congress.
Well, the EPA is not. The EPA has never been formally authorized by Congress. However, this agency has imposed over $1.3 trillion in regulatory costs since the Biden regime took office. We authorize committees here in Congress to ensure that we have proper oversight and accountability in the functioning of the executive branch. And this process is extremely vital because often we see agencies abuse the separation of powers, creating rules and laws, regulations without consent of Congress. And we appropriate funds to agencies like the EPA and expect these tax dollars and this tax dollar funding to be used in accordance with the legislative priorities and comply with the oversight requirements. So, Mr. Regan, last month, the Supreme Court rightly overturned the Chevron doctrine, which the EPA relied on to support its very controversial and costly rulemakings. Since your agency has never been authorized by Congress and has since lost most legal standing, does your agency still plan to enable rogue bureaucrats to enact unconstitutional regulations?
I'm not quite sure I follow you. You're saying that...
I'm saying the Chevron doctrine was overturned by the Supreme Court.
We have no authority?
I'm saying you've never been authorized. Wait, hold on.
Congress doesn't delegate authority for us to do the regulations and the business and the policy. So since 1970...
So the Chevron doctrine, where you have created all of these rules under that have been proven to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, has been overruled. So now I'm asking, are your bureaucrats still going to implement these rulemaking processes?
You do know Chevron is not just focused on EPA. So,
but you are. So I'm asking about the EPA, and I'm asking about your rogue bureaucrats that have enacted these unconstitutional regulations. Are you going to repeal them? Are you going to continue to implement them, or are you going to stop altogether, since it's been overturned?
Do you understand the ruling?
Do you understand the ruling of the Supreme Court?
I do, and so your question is ill-formed. No,
will you be repealing?
We're not going to stop.
So you're going to unconstitutionally continue with these rulemakings.
We're going to adhere to the Supreme Court and continue to do
our... So which rulemakings are you going to roll back?
We're going to adhere to the Supreme Court and continue to do our work in accordance to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court
So which ones are you going to repeal?
The Supreme Court didn't tell us to repeal anything.
They have been deemed unconstitutional.
No.
Absolutely, they have. This was a huge victory. And, you know, I mean, even in our appropriations bill in the House this year, the funding has been reduced by 20%. I would argue that it needs to be reduced by 100%. But in this, it's because of these radical Green New Deal policies that jeopardize domestic energy development and overload America's power grid and raise costs on American consumers and businesses. So with the EPA and these overreaching regulations, do you have any intent on working with the House majority to lower energy costs and produce more reliable and affordable energy?
If you look at our rule, we are producing reliable, affordable, diverse.
I think Americans' wallets would disagree with that. I mean, the Biden administration, if they continue under Obama's administrative policies, this regulatory pace for a full 8 years, the cumulative costs of this administration's rulemakings would exceed $60,000 per household. And as you know, the Biden administration reversed President Trump's successful deregulation by executive order. So the Biden regime is on pace of increasing regulatory costs at a rate of $617 billion per year in just rulemaking. Rulemaking that we are seeing is unconstitutional.
It's just shocking. You spend so much time with our regional staff and regional administration in Region 8 and have such productive conversations about how we're doing things for your district and your state, and then you take this microphone and you
I've also seen the coal plants that have been decommissioned in my state.
100%, we should not
I've seen the
exist.
energy regulations that have regulated my district into poverty.
You're spending time with my staff.
Sure.
In your
of
district.
course I am. I have oversight over your staff, and I want them to answer. And I want them to provide a service for the American people.
Complimenting them
but there
about
are
the
so much.
partnerships.
Yes, there are some things that have been done well, but
we
not
should be
everything.
100%
When we have $617 billion per year in rulemaking, that is absolutely absurd. When you are taking our affordable clean energy and regulating it out of existence and killing these good-paying jobs in my district, yes, I have a problem with that.
Sure. Yeah.
My time has expired, and I yield.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think that was 46 seconds over, so we'll take that. Thank you.
Mr. Raskin, if we're going to start timing people over, then you're going to have to start editing your comments on your opening statements and everything else. But I will do that.
Thank you, kindly.
All right. Chair recognizes Mr. Goldman from New York.
Wow. Mr. Regan, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I would just like to clarify a few things for my colleague from Colorado. The Loper-Bright ruling, as you know, said that the courts should not defer to agency rulemaking if a statute is ambiguous, and instead the courts get to determine whether or not what the statute means. Is that your understanding as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that would not require any regulations to be reversed or overturned, correct?
Correct.
But I do want to talk about that case because it is an incredible power grab for the judiciary. And I want to go through a couple things with you. I'm going to take as one example a recent rule that the EPA implemented and finalized in March, the greenhouse gas emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles, which is, I think you've put it as a strongest national greenhouse gas standard for heavy-duty vehicles in history, and one that would have a significant impact on my district, one of the most densely populated districts in the country, where there's a lot of last-mile delivery facilities and operations that create a tremendous amount of greenhouse gases. Can you just very briefly, just for timing's sake, explain the process that the EPA goes through to, and what kind of expert analysis is used to and what kind of input is implemented to finalize a rule like this?
Well, you know, we have some of the world's best engineers and scientists who focus on these rules, and typically, especially in our Ann Arbor laboratory, or world-renowned laboratory, we invite in all of our stakeholders, all of the industry, the best manufacturers, the best engineers and scientists, and we go through simulations and really look at what would happen in the real world if we were to pursue some of these regulations. So we take our scientists, match them with the world's best scientists on the private sector side, and then we look at how we can build on the regulations that preceded the one that we're about to put in place. We also look at a cost-benefit analysis, and we look at penetration rates, we look at the market, and we best determine how can we put the best technology on the road that keeps this country globally competitive and also reduce the pollution that we're aiming for.
That is, thank you for the explanation. Quite a in-depth and detailed, lengthy process involving the world's greatest experts. In that room with the world's greatest experts and the EPA experts, are there any federal judges?
No.
So what the Supreme Court just did, am I correct, is say that the experts should not get any deference in how they implement the rulemaking process, but that the non-experts in the judiciary are the ones who get to do that. Is that your understanding?
Well, I'll be careful in commenting on this ruling, but what I can say is the experts that are in the room and myself and the CEOs that are in the room that are making these decisions, this new case seems to take that away from us and gives it to the court.
Exactly. A complete power grab that was led for many years, decades, by the Koch brothers, who have spent tens of millions of dollars in trying to overturn this Chevron doctrine in order to benefit their oil and gas and other industries that harm the environment. And you know what's interesting about this case, this Loper-Bright case, is that Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself. He ruled on it. And yet Clarence Thomas took free private flights paid for by the Koch brothers, went to their events, raised money for them. This is all documented. And then after that, in 2020, Clarence Thomas just completely reversed his view of the Chevron doctrine. Funny, convenient. And yet he's ruling on this case. And what is going to happen is that this Trump Project 2025, just like Ms. Boebert said, is going to try to eliminate all environmental regulations. Donald Trump has offered to do that for the oil and gas company if their industry leaders can provide him with $1 billion to help in his campaign. But now that he has absolute immunity, if he becomes president, he can't get charged for that obvious criminal public corruption violation. And so he's going to try to implement Project 2025, eliminate the EPA, eliminate climate change from all regulations, eliminate the experts at the EPA and other agencies and put in his political lackeys, and then get to go to Clarence Thomas to determine whether or not what the executive agencies decided makes any sense. This is the destruction of our democracy. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. He ate up Mr. Raskin's 45 seconds. But Chair now recognizes Ms. Green from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's be crystal clear here. What you just witnessed was not a hearing. It was a MAGA circus act starring Lauren Boebert. And the only thing missing was the popcorn machine. Except this time, the clown show ran headfirst into a brick wall named accountability. From the jump, Boebert strutted into this exchange thinking she was about to land some big gotcha moment on EPA Administrator Michael Regan. She came armed with her stack of half-baked talking points, a few Koch brothers approved buzzwords about American energy, and the same worn-out script about the so-called Green New Deal destroying our way of life. And yet, within minutes, it was painfully obvious she had no grasp of the topic, no coherent line of questioning, and no exit strategy once her argument collapsed. That's the thing about the MAGA playbook. It works only when you control the microphone and the audience. Boebert is used to safe spaces, Fox News call-ins, friendly right-wing podcasts, where no one dares interrupt the performance. But here, under the scrutiny of a professional, her bluster wasn't just challenged, it was dismantled, point by point. Boebert tried to grill Reagan about the EPA, technology deals, and the so-called destruction of the Chevron process. The problem? She mashed together half a dozen unrelated concepts, Chevron deference, energy development, project oversight, into a confusing soup of words. If you were struggling to follow her, don't worry, you weren't alone. Even Reagan had to stop and say, "I'm not sure I follow you." That's diplomatic speak for, "What on earth are you talking about?" Her question was like someone trying to build a Lego set with the wrong instruction manual, missing half the pieces and insisting everyone else is putting it together wrong. And this is where it got deliciously awkward for Boebert, the watchdog in the room, armed with facts and an actual understanding of the law, calmly and methodically tore through her claims. Every MAGA talking point she tried to wedge into the conversation was met with reality. No, the EPA isn't secretly cutting deals with tech behind closed doors. No, the Chevron precedent isn't some socialist plot. It's a decades-old legal principle that keeps agencies functioning. And no, American energy isn't being destroyed by renewable investments. It's being modernized, so we're not chained to oil barons and polluters. You could almost see the confidence draining from her face as the back and forth continued. She started doubling back on her own words, talking in circles about destroying American energy over and over like a broken record, to the point where the repetition became self-parody. Here's the part Boebert will never admit. This entire rant was straight from the Koch brothers' playbook. These guys have spent decades trying to gut the EPA, dismantle environmental protections, and tilt the law in favor of corporate polluters. Why? Because every regulation they can destroy means more profit in their pockets. And when you hear Boebert parroting the exact lines about destroying American energy and ending the Chevron process, you're hearing the Koch agenda in real time. This isn't about representing her constituents, it's about serving her donors. Then came the bombshell, Project 2025. If you don't know what that is, buckle up. This is the Heritage Foundation's blueprint for turning the US into a far-right authoritarian state if Trump gets back in power. It calls for purging civil servants, eliminating climate regulations, handing public lands over to fossil fuel companies, and gutting agencies like the EPA entirely. Boebert wasn't just hinting at it. She was openly advocating for it. She laid out, in her own chaotic way, the exact steps MAGA Republicans plan to take. Destroy environmental safeguards, strip power from scientific experts, and give corporate cronies free rein over America's air, water, and land. That's why this watchdog moment mattered so much. This wasn't just about embarrassing Boebert. It was about exposing the broader, dangerous agenda she represents. When MAGA politicians like Boebert rail against agencies like the EPA, it's not because they hate red tape. It's because they hate accountability. The EPA's job is to make sure corporations can't poison communities for profit. It's to make sure energy projects meet safety standards, to enforce clean air and water laws, to base decisions on actual science. For Boebert and her crew, that's unacceptable. They want a government that works only for the wealthy few, where oil and gas companies can do whatever they want without pesky experts getting in the way. And if they have to undermine decades of constitutional law to make that happen, so be it. Here's the irony. Boebert probably thought this was going to be her viral moment, another clip to feed the MAGA outrage machine. Instead, it blew up in her face. Because when you strip away the shouting, the talking points, the repeated buzzwords, you're left with someone who can't actually articulate what she's fighting for. You're left with a politician more interested in political theater than governing. And when she went up against someone who refused to play along with the theatrics, she was exposed. This is what happens when the Fox News training manual meets the real world. You can't just say American energy 10 times in a row and expect to win the argument. You can't rely on corporate propaganda when the person across from you has receipts. Democrats, take note. This is how you handle MAGA theatrics. You don't get sucked into their rhetorical games. You don't try to outshout them. You calmly dismantle their claims, force them to clarify, and let the weakness of their argument do the work. Michael Reagan didn't have to humiliate Boebert. She did it to herself. All he had to do was keep asking for clarity and stick to the facts. And in the end, it became painfully obvious to everyone watching that she didn't have them. Let's not kid ourselves. This isn't just about one embarrassing moment for Lauren Boebert. This is about whether we allow the MAGA movement to dismantle our democracy piece by piece under the guise of energy independence and cutting red tape. Because if Project 2025 moves forward, if the Koch brothers get their way, if Trump gets back into office, The EPA, as we know, it will be gone. Climate protections will be gone, public accountability will be gone, and the people paying the price will be everyday Americans, not the billionaire donors Boebert answers to. So, yes, this was a satisfying moment to watch. Yes, it's always nice to see a MAGA mouthpiece caught flat-footed. But it's also a reminder they're going to keep pushing this agenda. They're going to keep showing up with their bad faith questions and their corporate scripts. And we're going to have to keep showing up with the facts, the patience, and the courage to call it out for what it is. Because this isn't just about winning a hearing. It's about winning the fight for the truth, for science, and for a government that works for the people, not just the polluters. And that's exactly why we need to stay engaged. MAGA wants you exhausted, tuned out, and too cynical to fight back. Don't give them that victory. Share this clip. Talk about it. Make sure your friends and family know exactly what's at stake when people like Lauren Boebert start parroting Coke talking points on the House floor. Thanks for watching. I'm Tarek Melrose. And if you're fired up and ready to push back against this MAGA nonsense, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to Tarek Melrose Vlogs. We're not just covering the news, we're fighting for the future.